crush an assumption. The theory that if the rate of change outside is greater than the rate of change inside, the end is near. How do you explain the maker movement and the growth of artisans and that area currently?
Yeah, and I think I might start, given I put that out there. So I think the main point, and the thing that particularly strikes me about that concept of the pace of change is that, so that sort of movement where it's coming from the ground up, it's so incredibly powerful, and we see it a lot with hackathons and like GovHack and things like that, where you're just getting that underground swell, and that's moving rapidly. That has pace, that has incredible force behind it, and I think what's important is, if you can have that pace that is ideally at least matching what's going on in the outside world and ideally going faster to get ahead, that's fantastic. There are a lot of organisations out there where their rate of change is just, if anything, it's just staying stagnant. So the end is definitely inside. But when you're looking at those ground swells, they've got that rate of change. If anything, they're going a lot faster than the rest of the world, and the rest of the world is looking to catch up. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that.
Yeah, I know a couple of things I would say is there's a lot of things changing, so you see the mega trends, there's so many things changing. It's really easy to get distracted, so pick your battles, pick your fights, pick the things that you want to change and you want to lead on, and don't get distracted from those critical few.
I work for UQ Power, we're company culture architects, so we're helping people innovate their culture. And often for a lot of companies, they don't yet know they need to change. And they're seeing it happening in the world, but they're not necessarily change ready or think they are. How do you help companies come to that point where they see they need to be introducing innovation if the leadership and people at the top are still putting their hands up?
I might try. Being in a big company, and I think ultimately you've got to have someone who understands it, and someone at a very senior level. So in ways, if they don't have that, the bottom up, the junior members will just become extraordinarily frustrated and leave. So my advice is to work with the senior team and find that one champion who actually can get it and then be that voice. So if I think of my experience coming from Silicon Valley to CBA, there are very things important that one would never question around our reputation, our brand, keeping people's money safe, etc. But the processes of how the bank worked internally, how we created innovation or product, I didn't know. I actually didn't really care. So, I just forged a way forward and people saw that. And so it's really finding a champion at that senior table. Otherwise, it's going to be hard, really hard.
I don't really have anything to add. I was going to say that as well. Other than you guys have probably heard the saying that the fish rots from the head down. The truth of the matter is you can't sell culture into a business that's led by people that don't realise the value of it. The only time I've ever seen a significant shift in thinking from a fairly traditional business was when you could speak in their language and talk about the financial upside of that cultural engagement. A lot of companies, that's kind of the way in, particularly the bigger ones. If you can prove that there's a bottom line benefit to reinvigorating the culture or shifting the course of the ship to a new destination, then generally you can sometimes prize a change of opinion. So that would be my only comment on that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of putting things side by side, really clearly side by side, for anything. So if you put a picture of one thing next to maybe what you are, and then the result next to what you are, and you let people come to their own assumptions rather than trying to convince them. You just got to pick the right things to show, but that can be a really powerful way, a simple way to do it.
What they said.
As leaders in each of your own companies, how do you instill your own moral and ethical compass in your employees or those around you? Like, do you find, say for example, Lisa, the transferring the money app, maybe it charges 10% to the customer. If you maybe disagree with that charge, how do you then influence how you as a company move forward?
So I think for us, the The app's free, by the way. And it should be, right? So that's my position. Each company has a set of values, right? And in banking, that is very important because you are dealing with people's money. And you want to make sure that's safe and secure and doing the right thing by them, because it's also a complex set of decisions, everyone's trying to make. When you try to take out and buy that first home, it's so exciting, but God, the paperwork is hell, right? The complexity of it and things like that. And so we walk in our customers' shoes, right, as we said earlier, but the values are enduring, right, which is to do the right thing by the customer, to actually put the customer's financial well-being ahead of our own. And the way we do that is we talk about it often. I talk about it a lot. I actually talk about when we haven't done that, when we do that, because it's making people aware, right, of the decisions we're making, right? And so I can actually, in the design process, question it as we go. So we have open dialogue all the time and make sure we celebrate and showcase where we're doing it and also where we haven't, and fix it.
Yeah, I think in my experience that value-based things, morals and ethics, they only come to the fore when they're tested. So what you find is you can cruise along for 6 months and it's fine, and all of a sudden a situation arises. So maybe it's a client comes to you, but they're working in an industry which in the past you've kind of said you wouldn't like to work for that industry. That's a test. So that's a point where all the eyes look to the leadership to say, what decision are you going to make here? So it's when you test those morals and those ethics, whatever they are, that you really instill those values in the rest of the company.
And I might just add to what you've said, Roger, there, in terms of actually when it comes to that test, whatever value, whatever cultures you've built around ethics and values, actually walking the walk and not just talking the talk. So when it comes to those tests, making sure when you've set up that culture, when you've actually put that there, making sure it is genuinely aligned to the way you are and the way you want your organisation to be. So when those tests actually come up, it's quite easy to pass them. Yeah.
I would just like Paul to say something around that, because Paul has an interesting measure with your values.
So, effectively, someone asked me the other day, how do you employ, obviously capability is important. So when, we're an accounting firm, so we need to have people who have got a degree and got certain capability and experience. But I actually, in the interview, I sit across the desk and watch how they flinch, how they twitch, how they move when I go through the values, those 5 values. If they're not giving me any reaction, they're not probably going to get through to the second interview. And it works. I'm telling you, my COO, who runs the whole business for me, sat across my desk, had 3 job interviews lined up after it, and it's hard to get accountants. And he had 18 years experience. I'm going, wow, how am I going to get this guy? So I just poured it out raw and real, told him here's our vision, here's our values, and he took the job on the spot. So you can employ, with your core set of values, the right people. And I often hear, I just can't get the right staff. It is not true. You are responsible for not getting the right staff. You haven't painted the picture of the vision, and you haven't got those core set of values that resonate with people who want to come and work for you. Does that make sense?
I'm wondering, I've been involved in corporate ideas gathering, innovation exercises myself in the past, and there's been a real cutting room floor syndrome amongst the staff where, all these ideas get thrown out there and only a very few get acted upon. And so, everybody's heart who hasn't been able to contribute something that's gone forward is on the cutting room floor, and everybody's marching forward with the new idea, but you've lost the hearts of the people who contributed and didn't get their ideas acted on. I heard a little bit about the RIP thing from Matt. That was great. How do other companies do that, manage that, the grief over not getting your, or the lack of motivation that comes from not getting your idea carried forward?
Just on that question, because I think the art of bringing the organisation together or a group of people together to come up with ideas is that while someone might birth an idea into that room and kind of drop it as their idea, the trick for the facilitator is to ensure that the entire room then takes ownership over whether the idea lives or dies, and that the idea is owned by the room as opposed to by the individual. So you can kind of minimise potentially some of that was my idea and you didn't take it forward, you took their idea forward. You kind of need to have that that sense of collective owning the thinking, which is why for us, whenever an idea is first put into a room, we always make a point of reassigning that idea to other people in the room to grow, to build on it before any idea is either killed or not, or taken forward. And the way we do it is, idea gets dropped into the room, new people come around to build on that idea, no matter how great or crap it is, it's subjective at that point. Everyone has to build on it. And then everyone comes back together as a group. We give everybody a fake $100 and you get to spend the $100 against the ideas that you want to get up. You can put $100 on one idea, you can put 50 on one and 50 on the other. And the idea that gets the most investment is the idea we move forward with. So that's our way of doing it. Different companies have different ways. I'm sure Inventium's got hundreds of ways of doing these things. But that's how we kind of minimise the emotion. So it becomes a group. Groups create, groups kill versus anything else.
Yeah, I'd quickly say that as part of an answer, it's not great when your idea doesn't get up, but the worst thing is for your idea not to even be heard. So we are really clear that at the first level, every idea gets a chance. And when you're full of a room of people that are challenging critical thinkers, there's people who want to kill it off before you've even finished your first sentence, right? So that's my role, to sort of hold back the wolves and say, give this the opportunity. So and I think that means a lot to people.
And I might add to that as well, just in terms of some of the methodologies around idea generation. And I think one of the common pitfalls that we see a lot in a lot of organisations is thinking that innovation starts with the idea, whereas there's a whole front-end piece behind it around actually making sure you're focusing your innovation efforts in the right direction. Is it actually a specific innovation mission that's aligned to the overall organisation strategy? So when it does eventually come down to idea generation, you have less bad ideas to cull because the ideas are going in the right direction anyway. So having that transparency amongst employees to know where they should be focusing those innovation efforts and making sure it's in the right space is really important. Yeah. And of course as well, I know a lot of different organisations will have different techniques for how they actually do idea generation. If you're lucky enough to actually get into a workshop and go through a process, that's great. But in a lot of the larger organisations, you've got an idea management software and a lot of ideas just get dropped in. The main thing, if you're in an organisation of that sort of scale and you're just dropping ideas in, it's really important that every single person is responded to in some way. It's communicated to if their idea isn't progressed or isn't chosen to be prototyped or something like that, making sure that they understand the why, because otherwise eventually you'll just have a bunch of dissatisfied people. So, yeah.
Thank you. Could you all please thank our panel very much. Thank our guest speakers.